So, Zen proverb. If you don't have time to meditate for an hour a day, you should meditate for 2 hours. What do we think? Wise saying? Oh yes. Very wise, isn't it? Also really irritating. Because if you don't feel like you have an hour and some smart ass goes, well, what you need to do is meditate for 2 hours, how helpful is that?
Not very.
Not very. We kind of know it's true, but it's really hard. And actually, it's well known that those who would most benefit from mindfulness are probably the least likely to invest in it, because resilience is actually not very instinctive as human beings. We're wired for survival. But I'm going to change all that today, because I'm going to show you how to practice mindfulness in a way that you don't have to give up 2 hours every day to meditate. In fact, I'm going to go one better than that. I'm going to give you 2 hours every day, and you can do whatever you like with that 2 hours. And by practicing that mindfulness, you're going to feel stronger and happier. My name is Sarah Furness, and I'm a mindfulness coach, which should be quite reassuring since we're all here to talk about mindfulness today. But there's something else I want you to know about me. I also spent 20 years flying helicopters in the Royal Air Force. Why am I telling you that? Well, because the first rule of being a helicopter pilot is you have to tell everyone. So I had to do that. But also, it's because this is where my mindfulness journey began. I started my mindfulness training when I was flying helicopters. And I organised that, by the way, just for the effect. Thank you, go away now. And one of the most vivid examples of mindfulness in action was when I was flying down this valley in Morocco. And I'm quite a young pilot at this point. I'm about 50 feet, which is treetop height. And this is kind of using all of my skill and expertise. There's a lot of twisting and winding. And there's a smile appearing across my face at about this point as I realised just how much fun I'm having. And then, canopy shatters and my cockpit gets very, very noisy. We've just hit high tension electricity cables that were strung across the valley, invisible to the naked eye, carrying about 750 kilowatts of power, if that means anything to anyone. And I now imagine that these wires are wrapping themselves around my tail rotor, and that spinning into the ground is shortly going to follow. And I remember kind of thinking, this is how I'm going to die. And actually kind of feeling quite pleased that it would be over quite quickly. And then 4 unmistakable words. Fly the aircraft, Sarah. And I realised that the guy in the left-hand seat, who was actually the captain, so that's me there, this guy was shouting at me, fly the aircraft, Sarah. And just like that, my attention was back in the cockpit. Because you see, it's the 21st century's greatest myth that we can multitask. We think we can. Culturally, it's expected of us. But our thinking brain cannot be in 2 places at once. It just can't. So in that moment, my attention needed to be on flying a badly damaged aircraft, not fantasising about my eulogy. And actually, I think the Air Force, unwittingly, or wittingly, trained us really well for that. Because all the way through our training, we were always taught to fly the aircraft, whatever else is happening. And I think it was understood that when you're under extreme pressure, confusion, fear, noise, everything that else is going on, it's going to detract from your performance, and you need to be on your A game at this point. So we were taught to do one thing, to have our attention in one place. We were taught to fly the aircraft. And that's mindfulness for me. It's about having your attention where you want it and need it to be. We didn't call it mindfulness back then, but that is what it is. And that's what the captain did for me. He brought my attention back into the cockpit where it needed to be. And then from that moment, my training kind of clicked in, and I sort of went, oh, okay, we're still upright, fantastic. And then I was flying the aircraft, and I was doing my emergency drills, and I was working with the crewmen in the back, found a little field to go land in. This guy did the radio call, the landing checks, all that stuff, and we landed safely. And my thoughts didn't return to my brush with death until we were safely shut down on the ground, and I was smoking every cigarette I could get my hands on. And that was a vivid experience for me of mindfulness in action. That was mindfulness in the workplace. And I think that if you can practice mindfulness in the cockpit of a helicopter, I think you can practice mindfulness just about anywhere. And it doesn't require 2 hours of meditating every day. So why would you do that? Why would you practice mindfulness? Well, because it will also increase your performance dramatically. So not only can you practice mindfulness in your workplaces, it will give you back more time and it will increase your output and the quality of your output. So I'd like to do a little exercise now. I'd like you to get those little jazzy notebooks out and do this exercise for me. So we're going to do it twice. And what I'd like you to write down is these words, but do it exactly as I have, so on 2 lines. Okay, your time starts now. So write, where is my focus, and then just raise your hand when you've done it. So what's that? Stop the stopwatch.
7 seconds.
7 seconds. I think some of you were a little bit early, sooner than that, yeah? Okay, this time, I want you to do it by going W and then down to the second line, M. H and then down to the second line, Y. E and then F. R and then O, and you get the idea. Do that, we'll start the timer, and then raise your hand when you're done. Go.
Do we count the space?
Yeah. Okay? 12 seconds. Anyone else still going?
Yeah.
And it works.
So, to go back to my point previously about multitasking, when we are multitasking, one of 2 things tries to happen. This is your brain. It tries to split itself into 2. For some reason, I've got a bigger right-hand brain than left. Your brain tries to kind of split itself into 2 because it cannot focus on 2 thinking cognitive tasks. So it will try to delegate one to the automatic function of the brain. You know, and walking, often writing is quite an automatic function until I ask you to do it differently. So it will try to delegate one to the automatic, and so it can focus its cognitive ability on the other task. And that's fine if that is a task that your automatic brain can do easily. But you can imagine if that has become a safety critical or a work critical task, if one of these is being delegated to the automatic functions of the brain, you're going to have error margins creeping. If it can't delegate to the automatic, then it starts to do this. Task switching, which is what I was asking you to do by going from one line to the other. So you're now having to focus your cognitive brain from one to the other very quickly. And the brain is quite good at doing this. We do this naturally. It's a cultural thing that we are used to doing, so we don't even notice we're doing it half the time until I make you do something weird like this, okay? But when we start doing that, the brain now has to do 2 more things. It has to do goal switching. So it goes, right, I'm going from the top line to the bottom line. So, and that is a cognitive function it needs to do. The psychologist is making me very nervous here. Just go with it. And the other thing is that it has to do rule activation. So it goes, right, what is the rule for task 1? Okay, I write from left to right or whatever it is. What is the rule for task 2? Okay, well, whatever it is, I write in English. And obviously, I was asking you to do 2 of the same task here, but if you're multitasking between 2 different tasks, writing an email, responding to something else that comes in, or doing a PowerPoint, you've got different rules. That takes a finite amount of time. Now, our brains are amazing, they do these things very quickly, but it amounts to a certain amount of time. And very clever people who have done research on this suggest that it takes you an extra 2 hours per day, just because you're multitasking. That's how much it costs you and how much longer it will take you to do it, 2 hours. Or another way to look at it is, let's say you're writing an email and you get distracted. When you come back to that email, it takes you about a minute to get back up to speed of where you were when you were distracted. So think about how often that might happen in a day. Every minute adds up to about 2 hours. Also, some of you were kind enough to show me your writing. Notice, I think you said, Ellie, writing like a child.
Yeah.
So the standard of output decreased, or the error margin increases. So your performance, first of all, we've got 2 hours, and your performance goes down by 40%, approximately. Or your error rate goes up by 40%. Now again, think about a mission critical task, something at work that's really important. Can you afford a 40% degradation in your output? More good news. It also affects your IQ. So people who routinely multitask, they have found, and it's recoverable, by the way, so don't worry about this. It doesn't mean that you're forever more stupid. But when
there's crossroads in East Enders.
well, yeah, I can't talk for that. But what they found is that when you've been routinely multitasking, if they measure your IQ, because people think of IQ as a static thing, we're born with it, actually not true. Again, I'm hoping the psychologist is going to back me up here. Actually, it's something which is quite malleable, and when you've been doing a lot of multitasking, your IQ goes down by roughly 10%, which is about the same as pulling an all-nighter in terms of what fatigue does to your brain as well. So if you put fatigue on top of that, you're now less smart, effectively. So 10% in IQ. And then the final bit of good news is that because you may feel a degree of tension or anxiety, you're potentially experiencing a little bit of stress, and when your brain goes into the stress response, it tends to isolate the sort of the front part of the brain here, which is the bit that's responsible for problem solving, creativity, emotion regulation, perspective, broadly speaking. And it prioritizes the survival part of your brain. So now, because you're multitasking, your ability to think outside the box has now reduced just because you're multitasking, because you're putting your brain under stress, effectively. So, don't worry, it gets better. It's more cheerful after this. If you want to increase your performance and gain back 2 hours a day, all you have to do is stop multitasking. When we think about what multitasking actually is, you are switching your attention. Your focus is in lots of different places. Think about what mindfulness is. It's about having your focus in one place where you choose it to be. So multitasking is basically the opposite of mindfulness. So if you want to reduce how much you multitask, you just need to increase how mindfully you do things.